Recording. Let's
can
start
just
right here.
let's
Hello,
just fucking
everyone.
power through. Fuck it, man.
All right,
Like
let's start the
worst case, a
recording here and
special
get through this.
episode.
Let's get through this episode. This is episode 60 of the Three Body Problem. We are live streaming into an unlisted YouTube stream for family and friends, so we can test this to see if we want to do the live streaming. Costin is having some internet issues, so if he pops off or around, we might have to cancel this entire episode. But here we are. Juanito, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. I'm like looking at the chat where someone's got like a Corona popped open in front of our live stream, and I'm really hoping they're in a different time zone. But I'll welcome it, man. It's Friday. It's a holiday weekend out here. This seems like the right way to start the day.
It's 6 p.m. somewhere in the world. Costin, how are you, my friend? What's going on with you and your internet? Is it still storming over there?
No more storms. It's actually pretty sunny somewhere again outside. But I blame the other side, not me, or the implants. Whoever has poor quality control, probably the implants.
The implants.
Can we kick off the show and just get to the news quickly? Costin, you were very, very excited this week to see a Salt Typhoon report from the NSA and every other agency in the world. Tons of logos everywhere talking about overlapping. We actually got multiple naming schemes, indicators of compromise, IOCs, all kinds of YARA rules. Give me your, is this Christmas morning for you?
No, like, look, I've been critical of this case in the past. Remember, I called it like the biggest intelligence failure. I said, like, look, this probably must be some other failure, because if this was something serious or big, we would have reports, we would have outrage, we would have indicators of compromise. So we have all sorts of things, and we had nothing, basically, officially at least. So now that this report drops, and there's basically, as you were saying, pretty much every agency in the world. And I was thinking that if you are not in this list, then probably you need to work harder. That's the only explanation, because I have no other. I mean, yeah, that's basically everybody that matters a lot. So now I'm happy with the report, obviously, because it has IP addresses, it has YARA rules, it has like some hashes, it has like detailed description, including what's new and things that have never been said before about this. But I wonder like about two things here. One, I feel that this is a kind of report that was available for over a year and was being shared in some circles extensively. And like finally now it's being made public. So my first question is, why so late? And two, again, this is a kind of report which is quite, I think it's nice, but this is a kind of report that takes any serious company, competent company, like let's say Mandiant or whoever, it takes about 2-3 weeks to write. So if it takes 2-3 weeks to write, why so late? Is it because
25 logos have to approve?
Yeah, each one of those motherfuckers have a lawyer and like
that's
a
an
policy
issue.
department.
That's an issue, because like this, technically, it takes 2-3 weeks to write by a competent security company. And if this took 1 year to approve and 3 weeks to write, then we have a problem on the approval side of things.
It absolutely did. Let me start there. Like, it absolutely did take that, a shit ton to wait. I don't know anything about the approval process, but I can tell you that it didn't take that long to write. I would also suggest, knowing very little, that this was primarily the content of two analysts I can probably name that started making the rounds, and they're private sector analysts, and somehow it all fucking rolls down the mountain collecting logos and becomes a giant ball of logos. But I'm not entirely certain that this is that much more content than what those original private sector analysts provided. And so like I really don't want us to like, I don't know.
This is a big thing that we should be applauding, though, even though it's late, even though it should have been.
Absolutely.
I mean, like, this is what we've been screaming for.
That's why I'm hedging my bets, because I think there's, like I've said it before in the podcast, I think it's fucked up when we ask for something over and over, and then somebody finally delivers it at great, pain, and then we go, well, this is shit, like, and fuck you, and like, what you're like. So that's really not. It's not. I don't want to do that. I know some people must have worked really hard just to get it through the approvals process in the first place. I do think that a lot of things with this Salt Typhoon thingy went pretty wrong. I'm also curious to what extent, like, that ball of logos, which it's cool from a policy side, it's cool from like a unified standpoint kind of way, and I'm sure it signals something to China that isn't really meant for us, but rather to say, like, you have a fucking coalition of like 20 countries that are pissed about this thing, right? At the same time, how much did any of those logos really contribute to this release beyond the cosmetics of it? And what is the real import of putting these things out there? Is it signaling to the Chinese, or is it defending people? Because if it's defending people, like, I don't know that I need that many logos. Hell, I may not need any logos. If you could send this from an official NSA address, like, or share it within like a month, or post it on a website in a year or whatever, but with a bunch of logos, I think the former seems like the more desirable one.
Putting aside the logos and the bureaucracy and all that giant mess, Costin, this is something that you could use for what? I mean, like, as a defender, let's just say for defensive purposes, what are you grabbing this report? Where are you focused, and what are you using it for? I mean, what's the value of it to a threat hunter like you?
Well, I want to outline maybe two important kind of new things that I spotted in this report that maybe they haven't been publicized before. So one of them, which I thought it was quite interesting, is they discuss the ability of these threat actors to extensively use containers on Cisco routers in order to run Linux environments, and in those Linux environments to run typical tools, including like Python, Golang binaries, and so on, which you wouldn't expect, right, on this Cisco infrastructure, like the 9000 series routers, which support this functionality. To me, that was like a very ingenious and interesting, and I don't think that I have seen it before. So that immediately attracted the attention. I'm speaking about these guest shells, which is a functionality of some Cisco routers that allow you to run Linux containers on these devices. So the fact that the attackers leverage this also offers some advantage, which is they escape some of the traditional logging functionality of this platform. So they make it a bit more difficult to detect. In terms of catching them, I would say that you need to monitor for the creation of these guest shells. So whenever someone is trying to create one, basically you need to spot that activity. To be honest, I don't know how popular these guest shells are, so it'll be very interesting to know if people actually use them for something. The other kind of things that they were doing, in my opinion, they're not that different from what Moonlight Maze was doing like 20 years ago. Like, if you look, what are they doing? Like PCAPs. What are they using the PCAPs to intercept credentials? What are they doing with the credentials? Accessing other devices. So it has like this Moonlight Maze feeling of hardcore hackers that essentially they know how to hack the networks and leverage typical Linux tools and Linux functionality, with a focus on compromising routers, tunneling traffic, capturing traffic from GSM and telecommunication networks, and tunneling that back into their infrastructure in China. So I thought it was interesting. The other thing that I was thinking is interesting are these YARA rules they provided. There's 2 YARA rules, and they talk about 4 custom tools. And to me, this is important because remember previously when we were talking about Salt Typhoon, it was like, there's no IOCs, there's no possibility to share anything because these guys, they're not using any custom tools. So what do you know? They're actually using some custom tools. And there are in particular 4 tools which are being described in this report, 4 custom tools and 2 YARA rules for them. There's this CMD1, CMD3, new 2 and SFT or something like this, or FLT, which is the other one, which in SFT exactly, which are interesting. Unfortunately, only one of them is on Virus Total, and the YARA rules, unfortunately, they don't bring anything new yet. But again, this is like a string. I call it a string, right? So the moment that you grab of this string and then you start pulling, in time you'll find more, and from there you'll pivot, like PDB paths, for instance. They'll bring more tools, and this way people can try to find more custom and related activity to these threat actors, as opposed to nobody has any idea about what's going on, and there's no sharing, and there's no useful information. Suddenly, actually, this is a proof that there was actually information that could be shared, and there's useful YARA rules and hashes and IP addresses which are associated with these guys. One
So you
more
found
thing.
them useful, like just to.
Do you
To
find
me,
this list?
yeah.
I'm sharing a screen on the list, a list on the screen here. Do you find this particularly
This,
useful?
no.
Just identifying these CVEs and the kind of products that are being popped for
To
initial
me,
accesses. Can you go down to the source there and do some mitigation there?
like, these are not so useful to me, like knowing that this is how they getting through these CVEs, including like a 2018 CVEs, but essentially Ivanti, Cisco, Palo Alto, this is what we are
Yeah, these are
talking
the
about.
network security things we've been talking about for the last year, right?
These are useful for defenders. I agree that they're not so useful for threat hunters like myself. And it's good that this report is tailoring both to threat hunters and defenders, because like many reports are either going one way or the other, which is incomplete or wrong in my opinion. So it's good that it kind of tries to cover both. I'm happy with that. If you ask me, I'm happy. I took the YARA rules, I put them in all my systems. I took the IP addresses, I put them in all my systems. I check like all sorts of network traffic, again, trying to develop custom signatures, trying to hunt for more. So this is good, like this is good stuff. There's one thing which attracted my attention, and I think it's worth mentioning here, which I don't know if you guys have seen it as well, but I smiled when I saw it. And it says this activity partly or partially overlaps with cyber threat actor reporting by the cybersecurity industry, commonly referred to as Salt Typhoon, Operator Panda, Red Mike, UNC 5807, and Ghost Emperor, among others. And now the best part, the authoring agencies are not adopting a particular commercial naming convention, and hereafter refer to those responsible for the cyber threat activity more generically as advanced persistent threat parentheses APT actors throughout this advisory. So this is something that hurts a bit to read, in my opinion. I tell you why. Because like later when you want to refer to this, how are you gonna refer to it? As the advanced persistent threat actors report? Like there's thousands of advanced persistent threat actor reports. So it would have been nice if they just gave it like some random name.
That you wanted them
NSA,
to add another one.
yeah, I wanted them to add another one, like a Byzantine salt or whatever, right? I don't know what's the code name for that, but I would have preferred if this report actually had some kind of a title or unique name specific to this that you can refer to. Otherwise, you can't refer to Advanced Persistent Threat Actors report. Yeah,
well,
so that's my only objection.
Everyone's going to call it the Salt Typhoon report regardless.
Fair enough.
But what I think is interesting is like this is not a common. I don't think I've ever seen like that language in any advisory before, and so I don't think this has anything to do with them not throwing a name in the ring. I think this has to do to me, this signals that even that pile of logos does not have an easy time saying this is Salt Typhoon. Like, these are the hard boundaries of Salt Typhoon, and this is not Salt Typhoon, right? Like, and that's the problem we've been talking about with Salt Typhoon. Like, even when I saw the term Ghost Emperor in there, I'm like, right? Like, I know, because I know enough of the drama with, like, people have published on Ghost Emperor and been told, no, like, sort of, kind of, but not really. Also note that this doesn't include the Trend Micro name. It doesn't
Earth
include
Earth
it doesn't
Esters,
yeah,
yeah?
Earth
Mhm.
Estries. It does not include the who were the other guys who published on this? It was Trend Micro.
Palo Alto, right? Palo
No.
Alto published as well.
No, I mean Palo Alto and Talos and everybody tried to publish on stuff. And I'm not saying that the Palo Alto one was bad or particular, but like there
We didn't
was
get any good one.
Mm.
There wasn't
No,
any
but
good detailed one.
I think more importantly, there were reports from good companies that looked like good reports, but the complaint, the immediate disavowal was, you're close, but that's not Salt. And then like for the other thing, you know, you're like, oh, we looked at Ghost Emperor, or like that demo decks, rootkit and whatever, and they go, sort of, but that's not really fully Salt, or like that's a part of Salt, or like that's a component that Salt used, but that wasn't Salt that used it when you saw it. It was Salt that used it back over here. So like, and that's why I don't, you know, we didn't really adopt the nomenclature of anybody else. And every time we talked about Trend's report or somebody else's report, I was kind of back channeling and being like, yo, people who actually, you know, the 3 people on Earth that I think I'm going to say the 6 people in the industry who know what the fuck they're talking about with these things, like full on. They're the only people. You go to them and you go, sir, ma'am, is this Salt? And they go, a little Salt, but not fully Salt. And you go, okay, not this one. And then you bring another one. You go, is this Salt? And they go, this one was close to Salt, but it's not Salt. And you just kind of, so I honestly, if I'm looking forward to anything, it's I'm hoping Dakota will get inspired to like go after the companies, because the most concrete thing in that report as far as who these guys are is not the APT naming, it's the fact that they mention actual companies in China. And, you know, as we saw from Dakota's Hafnium post recently, you can dig a fair amount of interesting shit if you understand how that ecosystem works. So that's the part I'm actually more excited for in as far as like how we clump and designate and express the boundaries of what Salt Typhoon is.
Good segue. I have it up on the screen here. You're referencing 3 Chinese companies that this multi-logoed report is claiming are providing cyber-related products and services to China's intelligence services, including multiple units in the PLA, MSS. The data stolen through this activity against foreign communications, as well as intrusions and so on, can provide Chinese intelligence services with the capability to identify and defend. This fits into kind of what we've been talking about with Dakota and on the last episode as well, around the margin research, people talking about the use of militias. And like in some cases, these guys may not be able to help themselves. Costin, what do you take away from these named Chinese companies? I'm not going to try to name them because I always butcher it. I always butcher the pronunciations, but what is the relevance here?
You can always pronounce them like with the Romanian accent, right?
I know, you're lucky that you have a Romanian accent.
Sichuan Juxinhe Network Technologico.
There you go.
There you go.
Painful.
And like it will be broken anyway, right? It won't be.
One of these companies have already been sanctioned, by the way. I should add. I believe the first one, the Sichuan Jush. I'm not going to try. I've been sanctioned already. The point is, this is early signaling that possible sanctions might be coming down the pike for all of these folks. And then we've started to see actual individuals getting indicted. So like it feels like things are moving a lot stronger on the. Is this what we're talking about defending forward?
First of all, what worries me here is that they say something around the lines, these operations have been linked to multiple China-based entities, including at least these three companies. So this sounds very worrying to me from several points of view. One, the fact that we are thinking or saying that one threat actor is linked to three companies becomes a bit messy, in my humble opinion. And it's at least three companies, maybe more. When you get three or more companies to work on the same project and you still call them Salt Typhoon, I fear that the Salt Typhoon umbrella has become a bit too wide for a kind of thing or big pile mass of different activities from different companies that shouldn't actually be in the same umbrella anymore. So maybe this is why people are staying away from calling it just one way or another. My fear is that we will never be able to specifically use any single actor name for all these big mass of connected and possibly overlapping activities from at least three different companies, potentially more. That's why I'm thinking it was better if the NSA or whoever was giving them a different name, and let's just leave Salt Typhoon behind, move past that mess and move into something better, for which again we have some IOCs, we have some tools, and at least we can talk about this report now publicly and link to it and refer to it, as opposed to linking to Salt Typhoon, for which again there's no IOCs, there's no report, there's nothing, only news articles.
Washington Post articles, yeah.
Exactly. So this is like what worries me a bit, that as at least three companies, maybe more, it's very hard to pile all that under one umbrella in practice. So yeah, maybe let's move past that.
I share your apprehension about what this is saying about Salt. I think my suspicion is that the problem is different. Show us that cap. What is it? Oh, look at that European ass water bottle.
Not only that, but when you put it back, you can't. You need to pull it up and kind of. Yeah, and sometimes you
guys
you
couldn't
catch
get the
like
Germans
your
to design the caps. Like you have the Germans right there.
You accidentally catch your skin. It's super painful. Like I don't know.
Sorry. Okay. So I think the issue with Salt, in this case, like I share what you're concerned about. I'm concerned about it too. I think that normally this would be a sign of the activity might be too wide for the bucket. However, in this case, I don't think that's what's happening. In this case, I'm afraid that this is the third one of these that we've seen from the Chinese in how they've played out publicly. And so I would say the original Hafnium report had no clear sense of what the original actor, never got clarity of what the original actor was. Greatest clarity we ever got on them was 4 years later or something. We hear the names of the companies and the individuals involved, but we don't get a clear demarcation of Hafnium begins here and ends here from a technical side. Volt Typhoon happens. We get a news story. We get a lot of complaining. We get a lot of people talking about it. We never get a sense of what Volt Typhoon is beginning to end, any clear sense of whatever. I think there may have been some company stuff at some point. Then Salt Typhoon happens. You don't get any, moreover, not only do you not get a clear sense of demarcation, you get a lot of people talking, a lot of random reports, and the demarcation of having the right view of the thing eludes all of these different places. And there's contention to the point where even a 30 logo advisory from every intelligence agency on the planet is disavowing, instead of saying, out of all of these, we like this one makes the most sense to us or whatever. They basically throw their hands up and go, we're not really adopting any of these. To me, that's not us not doing a good job. To me, that's not the standard of reporting going down. To me, that's not the analysts are like playing it too fast and loose and the activity is too big. To me, this is the adversary has figured out a way to play to their strengths and, more importantly, to our weaknesses. and it is eluding our ability to properly characterize the activity in the first place. Like, it's not that that the thing is not happening. It's that as much as we're seeing of it is murky enough, wispy enough, ephemeral enough that we're uncomfortable making concrete intelligence assessments about it, at least on the technical side. And I think that that's an insane accomplishment. I think that that's not something that's just happening. That's something the adversary is pulling off, and it's at least the third one of these where they're pulling it off. And we should be having a different conversation rather than just saying, oh, APT is going to APT, China going to China. And you go, China-ing different. China-ing better than the rest of us in some interesting ways. At least, I won't say better than the other threat actors, but I'm saying at least they're besting the CTI community. They're besting the IC's CTI capabilities. So we need to all sit back and have like a serious come to Jesus conversation about like, yo, the math ain't mathing anymore, and we might need to like, what are we going to do about it?
I want to flag here that our friends at the Dutch intelligence agency, AIVD, MIVD, also said that the Dutch telco providers were targeted by Salt Typhoon. In fact, some smaller ones were. This is a Google translation, so I'm not vouching for the total accuracy of it. It said it didn't receive the same level of attention that those in the US, but did observe targets. They were not large telcos, but smaller internet service and hosting providers. Is this targeted, or was this just kind of like a sweep and spray to see which one of those devices were in? What do you think the Dutch is trying to signal here? Because their logo is probably in that one as well, but they're probably flagging something else here. Why did they put out this statement?
I don't know why. I wouldn't be surprised if if their logo is in the other one. I wouldn't be surprised if this has something to do with their remit to defend the Netherlands, for example. I don't know, right? I don't know how the politics work, but I think it's cool that they said it. And if they just said it because they wanted to say it, I think that's great. Like, hey, yeah, we saw some shit here, not a whole lot, but some. You're like, okay, that's a data point, thank you. But I'm also curious if like the politicking involves that they operate on the basis of defending the Netherlands, and that entails saying, hey, yeah, some of it was here. What I will say that's interesting to me is I'm curious when you're hitting these things, these telcos, right? Like, and what we heard about in the US was not exclusively telcos, but was heavily telco based, if I remember correctly. How much of the magic that we're missing here and how much of what they're doing is coming by virtue of access to the telcos themselves, right? Like, if you remember Cloud Hopper back in the day, like the insane innovation of, I believe it was APT 31. Please don't throw rocks at me, but the insane innovation of Cloud Hopper was the realization by PwC BAE that this Chinese APT was hacking MSSPs directly and then using those MSSPs to traverse downstream customers. So you weren't seeing them on the wire. You weren't really seeing, like, you had a much harder time realizing like what was happening because they were riding the access of an upstream maintainer. When you tell me that these people are going at telcos, the part of me that doesn't understand how ISPs work and doesn't understand how backbone routers work, because I'm not good at network at all. I defer entirely to Mac for these things. I just, Donald McCarthy is my knowledge of networks. But when I don't understand, since I don't understand these things, I'm wondering, how much do you get by virtue of riding on top of an ISP? Like, when I'm saying, like, when you have access to those sorts of, assuming they get access to, say, backbone routers and whatnot, what magic can be unlocked, is being unlocked? They may not be using it this way, but like, how much are we missing here, right? If I can hack Google, which obviously is a tall order, and ride on the dark fiber that Google's networks uses and just pop out of a data center on the other side of the planet and do my attacks, I think that's a pretty god mode-y way of doing what you do. How much of that is also a factor when you pop ISPs?
Yeah.
And that's an open question. I have no fucking clue, but I'm curious.
Costin?
Um, I think it's interesting that the IVE and MIVD were saying that the hackers didn't pivot further into those ISPs, and I think a lot of these operations, they have a very, very how to say time dependent focus. So these companies, they do go around, they hack everything that is possible. So whenever, let's say, they get lucky and they manage to exploit one of these vulnerabilities, they achieve some kind of persistence or access, and they don't do anything further there unless they have a specific query about that country or about something that needs to be stolen or taken from that particular country. So I think that this is like what's kind of characterizes these operations, in the sense that they are very closely aligned with whatever targets Chinese intelligence has at those points. So obviously, the vast majority of this activity appears to have been happening in the United States around the presidential elections, right? Remember, they targeted J.D. Vance, they targeted all sorts of important people in the government. So I think that that was their time-based focus, which explains the targeting of the United States. Now, the fact that they deployed and achieved persistence all over the world is very worrying, in my opinion. So you need to go around and find wherever they got access. And I think that this is quite tricky, because even if you patch some of these vulnerabilities, if they deployed persistence, be it either in a guest shell or like some other means of persistence, it will still be there if you patch it. So I would urge, obviously, all telcos, ISPs in pretty much any country to look for this kind of signs, to try to identify if they had any kind of activity and logs related to however we want to call it, Salt Typhoon or whatever, and try to go back at least 2 years, because a lot of people, whenever they get a report like this, they just try to scout now for communication with those IP addresses, and they find nothing typically, because there's nothing to be found anymore. The persistence and the remote access capabilities have been moved to other means a long time ago.
One question that I keep getting from folks who listen to this show, and I just got it popped into a signal chat there, is Costin talks about putting these things into his system. He grabs a YARA rule and he grabs this into his system. Can Costin spend a minute and talk about what the system is? I don't know what you can share, Costin, but when you say into your system, can you give folks kind of like a behind the scenes look at what your infrastructure looks like, or what it ideally could look like?
Yeah, sure. Look, I'll start like a bit further back. And one of the greatest chess players in history was Garry Kasparov. He was like a world chess champion and is widely regarded as one of the strongest players who ever lived. And he said something very interesting in one of his interviews, which kind of remained in my mind. It kind of shaped my approach to threat intelligence. And Garry Kasparov said he has the largest database in the world of openings. And even like recently, he was training Magnus Carlsen, probably the strongest player who has ever lived. He was training him in these openings. And Garry Kasparov was saying, I have the best database of openings in the world. And that was maybe the source of his knowledge and ability to be so strong in the game of chess. So I realized after reading that interview that whoever has a historical database of the best indicators of compromise in the world, and that would be domains, IP addresses, YARA rules, samples, is gonna be ahead of all the others, because that capability is quite transient. So let's say a new company appears, they do some amazing thing, they create some YARA rules, write a few blogs, and then they disappear. And all that knowledge is lost. And even like it becomes very hard to track activity because their pages get deleted. So like random example here, a company a long time ago published about something called Operation Harkonnen. So even nowadays, you try to find this Operation Harkonnen, it's nothing on the internet. You want to maybe try to find the Norman report on Cloud Atlas from 2014. It will be very difficult for you to find it and look into their orb network. Like Cloud Atlas was deploying orb networks back in 2014-15. So I've
Why,
been
you're just talking
collecting.
about just general link rot
Yeah.
on the internet and
Well,
the sites going offline, that
yeah,
kind of thing.
and if you don't collect them, they just disappear and get lost. Like there's a lot of famous samples, for instance, which are probably lost forever, like samples of famous malware, which is why I built this project is now on VT to try to monitor and track and collect all these samples. So when I
Wait,
say,
I have a question.
yeah,
Because you're going too fast and you're skipping over a lot of things.
yeah, no,
Is it even possible now to start? Because this is what, building this over 15 years, right? All
More,
these 100s of
more.
openings. Yes, I remember the early days
More.
when you used to have all of
25.
us going through PDF reports and just extracting IOCs to put into the system, right? Like, is it possible for someone to start from scratch now? Are they ever going to catch up? Like, give the folks a sense of
they can, but again, it will be difficult to find some really old stuff which has disappeared from the internet. It may still be, I don't know, in the internet archive perhaps, but a lot of stuff is disappearing from the internet. So especially malware samples. Malware samples, like they get lost forever.
I don't think it's just malware samples. I think it's more painful on the malware samples, but I think the network side is also ephemeral in a way that we don't note, right? Like if I find out about, it's not that you can't go back and find all these historical indicators. Someone's archived them, someone will share them with you if you really, really want it. But think about the entropic cost of just finding it now versus finding it, like looking into it 3 years ago. We have better tools now, but the window of visibility has also rolled on. So when when I want to ask questions about an IOC that is alive now, I can leverage all these, even if the services I rely on don't have any information, just by virtue of me asking about it, they can go and there's a live thing that they can find information from and extract it and so on. Asking about a thing from 3 years ago, if they happen to have the information, they happen to have stored it, they happen to make it available, they happen to not have gotten bought by Microsoft and killed or something like that, then I can maybe get it. But if they don't have any of it, my asking is not going to turn anything up. Hell, with certain IPs and stuff, it may turn up entirely inconsistent data that's not relevant to what you were looking at. So there's a tax to it. I think part of it is also the fact that like this is a siloed off problem, right? There's no library of Alexandria Synapse instance where everybody goes, you know what? After a year or whatever, we're all just going to pile our shit in here, and then all of us don't have to maintain it, and we can all have like a single source of truth, kumbaya type shit. I would take that over an announcement about like normalizing names. How about you fucking just start putting all your IOCs in one bucket, and like we can have an authoritative record of it after a certain age where you don't consider them to be proprietary or whatever the fuck. That would be lovely. But that doesn't exist. It's like the same as like VirusTotal submitter trackers, which is like one of the like out loud secrets of the industry. A lot of people have been figuring out ways to like do the hypertotal thing from back in the day and try to.
Can you spend a second there and explain to the folks who don't do it what you're talking about?
Well, without getting into like dirty laundry stuff, right? Like VT does right to obfuscate where the submissions are coming from, which is fine. We are not looking
because guys are tracking certain submitter IDs to see who's submitting what, and there's a whole shenanigans in that background. Yeah, back up and explain.
Let me kind of push it on. It's like, right, when you submit something to VT, there's like a very fungible ID that is collision prone and everything in order to just obfuscate where it's coming from. And I think that that's valid, right? You want a large submission platform. You don't necessarily want people to feel like they're being they're doxing themselves in the process of submitting something that the community wants, which is fine. It's great. And they still give us like a country, so which is usually what a lot of tracking and a lot of like quick finds have come from, right? Like I used to have a VTI query that I could run for Iran, and like you'd pop an APT up like no matter what. South Korea, no matter what. You're like, what am I going to look at today? Like run this one query and you just go submitted from South Korea, lower than a certain, what is it? Like lower than 8 detections. Let's say an HWP file, it's only been submitted less than 3 times from unique IDs, blah, blah, blah. And then you go, oh, look, North Korean APT, cool. And you go off. So it's enough of the visibility for the like basic hunting. But what would happen is when you're looking at something interesting, like something really rare, a single file is a good indication, but chances are that you're missing a second component, you're missing another DLL, you're missing the infection vector, or like whatever it is. And if this person uploaded this one file, chances are that they also uploaded the other files. So it wasn't so much that people wanted to de-anonymize submitters, but you just wanted to be able to bucket the submitters so that you could say, these, this person uploaded these files, and in the past week, that same account has uploaded these other files. Chances are they're dealing on the same incident response. I should pay more attention to the other files surrounding it. I don't know how we ended up on this really long tangent, or how I pushed us
VT
in this
frowns
really long
on that,
tangent.
right? No, it's a crucial part of the
Not
system.
only that, but like it's very important to say here, if you don't collect this information, and I think a lot of companies, they collect, if you don't collect it during a window of
Exactly.
about 10 days, it's lost. Like
It's
you
gone.
don't have a chance to grab it anymore.
So that was my point. That's how we ended up here, was to say everyone has their own submitter tracker of some sort, the people who can afford to like get the data. But there's not a consensus system of some sort where, if Costin's been tracking it for 6 years, but I've only been tracking it for 2 years, and this other person's been tracking it for 8 years, like we have entirely different windows. And like the two never necessarily shall meet. So you see people having to ask each other, being like, do you have something on this one from this year? Like I have something from over here. And like, that's the moment. That's when I feel like as an industry, we're like rubbing sticks together, trying to make fire. Like it's the lack of that common sense consensus building that says, look, like this isn't a competitive advantage. This is us being dumb. Let's just, that's the initiative I want CrowdStrike and Palo Alto and Microsoft to announce. So like now that they figured out names, maybe they can also actually put the underlying substrate of like nodes and like whatever hypergraph we should all be sharing into one community Synapse instance. Like maybe Visi will, I think it would be strategically quite smart. Maybe Visi can say, hey, I'll host a free industry backlog master source of truth Synapse instance that will hold every IOC everybody had and whatever connections they had that's older than 18 months.
There is no technology limitation to making this happen. This is a competitive / whatever will / why does VT frown on people checking submitter IDs?
I mean, I can't speak for them. I'm sure that they have their own reasons. I can guess at some of those reasons, which is
they have a competitive advantage in that they have their own Google guys that may have access to it. I mean, you never know.
No, I don't think that's a decision. Though people at Google have fuck submitter IDs. Like the people at Google have levels of data, and I can say that I had access to an amazing array of information, not just about VT, but the internet and like stuff enriched on top of VT, but just by virtue of being at Google. Like I didn't build any of that shit. The fucking geniuses at Tag had built most of it. The geniuses at Project Zero, the people who did. Think about the technology Google has had to build to provide Google, right? There's like a copy of the internet in RAM that's just sitting there that you can go hunt for. Usually you use it for indexing websites for Google, but if Clem wants to use it to find watering hole sites or like whatever, it's there. So like you, just by virtue of working there, you're riding on the shoulders of like generations of giants that have scaled shit amazingly, and I appreciate it. But essentially they have way more data. This is like a huge, massive tangent. I don't know why BT necessarily doesn't want that. I can see why they wouldn't want it, which is you don't want to fuck with the community ethos of it all, and you don't want to hell, I think there's even a monetary incentive to saying you can't do this, but if you pay for the highest tier, you can kind of
You
do this
might.
yourself.
Yeah.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Fine, fine, sure. But anyways, yeah, I think we diverged massively, and
Yeah,
the
we're getting
people
yelled at.
want the system.
Chat is
That's
people
fair.
in the
That's
chat are
fair.
yelling at us for interrupting Costin. Costin, they ask is finish up your system description.
We'll finish. We just diverged into this because it's a very good analogy to what VirusTotal is doing, and that window of visibility, which is probably forever lost. So what I do whenever a report like this drops, I take all the IOCs, I put them in my systems, and then I expand on them. Like I'll just give you an example. Maybe I can develop a signature for one of the command and control servers listed in that report. Then I scan the internet, or I leverage all the mechanisms at my disposal to identify other IPs which show the same behavior that particular moment. And that, if you don't do it in that moment, it usually takes these threat actors a few days to shut down everything. So it'll be lost forever. You won't be able to rescan the internet for that CNC. You won't be able to rediscover it unless you do it on that specific moment. So for me, that's why these IOCs are very important. Like whenever there's some news of Salt Typhoon, if you drop the IOCs, then they're relevant because you can expand on them before they disappear. So they're like ephemeral in a way. So what I take all the IOCs, I expand on them. I take all the domains and host names, I expand on them. So some reports, for instance, that dropped recently, they were covering some interesting activity, and they had 4 command and control servers, and you couldn't find others by, let's say, common means. But if you went back to who is registration and check what other domains were registered on the same date, if you have that information, then you can pivot on a few other things. You increase the cluster, you tag it, and from there you keep increasing and increasing. And I do the same with YARA rules. I built a system where I deploy all the YARA rules, public, private, that I get, and they constantly rescan everything in my possession with those YARA rules, including new files collected by crawlers and honeypots. And in particular, I started, collecting malware samples back in 1994, I think it was. I think with our first exchange partnership may have been with Sophos, if I'm not mistaken, like back in 94. So I still have all those samples, like going back to 94. I have CDs, CD-ROMs, I have DVDs of malware samples. So after I left my previous job in 2023, I went back to all my backups, hundreds of CDs and hundreds of DVDs and hard drives, and I just copied everything to modern storages, unpacked everything, RAR archive, GPG, PGP archive, zip, Arch, if you remember Arch. Some people may remember an archivator by Robert Young, JAR, which was an updated version of Arch. you won't like imagine how many of these things. UC2 was another archiver that I had to find in order to unpack some of these things. And just putting everything in this collection of samples that goes back to 1992 and actually 1991, some samples, in order to have extensive hunting capabilities. And like I said, whenever there's new information, I try to expand on it and save all that in a database. And it took me time to build all these systems, but I think that long term, whoever has the most knowledge will be able to train models better, AI models, LLMs, whatever. You'll be able to pivot better. You'll be able to find new activity better. You'll be able to do attribution in the end and connect operations across decades or many years better than those who don't have access to these tools. So this is like in short what I'm building on, working on.
Question for you is, can you talk a little bit about hardware needs
Mhm.
and costs,
Mhm.
software needs and costs, storage needs and costs? Like this
Mhm.
seems like it's a full, it's like a fully functional
Mhm.
lab.
It is, yes. Um, so in terms of storage costs, I think storage is like really important in the sense that you should store as much information as possible. This is something that the NSA have also figured out back in the days, or Israel, or whoever. Everybody has pretty much figured out the idea that the more information you can store, the better. But the information that you store needs to be easily accessible. So if you just, let's say, dump petabytes of pcaps, but you can't search them instantly, you're gonna have a problem. So for that, it's important to store the kind of information that allows you to search it in an efficient manner, one way or another. So what I store is in the range of about 500 terabytes, I think, at the moment, which maybe it's a lot, maybe not, I don't know. This kind of hardware to store 500 terabytes nowadays costs in the range of $20,000. Me personally, I invested maybe a bit more, maybe in the range of 80 to $100,000 to
Phew.
build all the storage and processing infrastructure for it, routers, servers, uh, all that. This is like, but again, that's not a lot of money for startups or for companies. I know of other companies which have much bigger storages and like petabytes of malware samples, petabytes of clean files, which by the way are also very, very important when you try to figure out how to do similarity and attribution and code features extraction and pivoting on that. So yes, there's a lot of resources, but again, these once you have this foundation of threat intelligence, essentially, and data, then you can do all sorts of things like protect your iPhone, or you can tunnel the traffic from your iPhone into a server, and on that server you can analyze the traffic with all available IOCs going back several years. Including, you can check your traffic going back several years with new IOCs. So you have to be able to do it both ways. Old IOCs on new traffic and new IOCs on old traffic that you have saved. And while we are on this topic, I have one request, and shout outs to our good friend Edward Fiascal. If he could write an updated version of his passive DNS tool, be it in Golang, Rust, or something modern, that would be super fantastic. I mean, if you haven't played with this tool, it's kind of essential for your home network. If you want to save traffic,
What's it
that's
called?
passive DNS.
What's the name of it?
Passive DNS.
Oh,
It's
The
amazing
tool
that
is called passive DNS.
he wrote it like maybe 10 years ago, and it still compiles without problem on a modern Ubuntu. Like, and it just works. It's amazing how stable it is. I have it running for more than a year on some systems with no leaks, no problems whatsoever. Super, super stable. So shout outs to Edward, who built an amazing tool, which is the foundation of my data collection at home. Uh, so yeah, just to summarize again, I hope this answered the question from, was it from Tom? I think it was from Tom, looking at the nickname in there.
no, we just wanted to
Yeah.
figure out what the system, the cost, the
Mhm.
realistic nature of someone trying to do this themselves now. How would a lab go about starting something like this? I
Mhm.
think all of this is useful information for the audience because everyone wants to be able to hunt like at Costin's level. And the question is one, can you realistically do it without access to all this old data and all these clean files and this entire system that you've built? Or again, let me throw AI in the mix here. Is there a mix? Is there a use case for AI to come into the mix and kind of simplify the system for you, make it more efficient? I know you don't like the efficient word with AI because you're worried about us being replaced, but how are you embedding new AI capabilities and tools into the system for efficiency?
Are you
No?
look? So no. I think I wanted Coast. Like, I'm trying to let Costin speak as much as possible, but like in large part because I'm massively unprepared and tired. But I think it's not the AI bit, right? Like AI is a factor, but it's actually Costin mentioned like Moonlight Maze, and we talk about this with like all of the malware paleontology, cyber paleontology work that like Kosin and I really enjoy doing. People like Silas will do. Like there's a subset of folks that like doing that stuff. You know who the cyber arsonists are out here, but the cool thing about it is precisely that technology changes over time and that we are figuring stuff out. We are making certain types of analysis cheaper even before AI came into the picture, right? Like what I remind people when Silas and I did Gossip Girl is there was amazing top level research being done at all sorts of places that worked on Stuxnet, for example. That nobody could impeach the amazing research that was done by Symantec or Kaspersky or all these other ESET, all these other folks at the time. However, there was no YARA back then. People weren't you couldn't really like not widely adopted. You didn't have retro hunting. You didn't have these like big distributed systems. Passive DNS wasn't as readily available. Like there's all these ways in which the industry was just at its infancy back then, and you just didn't have that. So you go back, you apply the tools, and you find all this new shit. I think AI is the obvious next step in that. I think it's a different it approaches a different part of this, which is more like the evaluative and analytical side of things, which has not gotten a whole lot of gains along the way on the automation side, just by virtue of just the best you could do was like some people would apply ML. And ML, I could tell you, at least from the Sentinel-1 perspective, is incredibly valuable for like scaling up certain use cases that you might not otherwise and increasing automation on some level that was appropriate for, that was awesome for the technology of 5 years ago. But it still wasn't doing any of the analytical bits or the evaluative bits in any way that you would call home about, right? Like you still needed analysts and you still needed domain experts, and it meant that you were bogging those folks down. So there's a lot of ways in which you can improve those systems now. And the people who are like, it's amazing how many folks in our industry are some of the most enthusiastic experimenters right now. Like the amount of people I know who are old school threat hunters and like well-established reversers and all these people who you would think would be like curmudgeons set in their ways, who are all experimenting daily with AI is amazing, including Costin and myself. But like people like, I mean, I don't want to start calling folks out, but like Vitor Ventura, for example, or folks who were doing like Martin Wendigenson has become like a massive resource for a lot of us on the AI side of things. But his primary use case is like he's an international relations guy who like went into doing like this information research at scale and started applying AI. And now he's like, you're going to him primarily as an AI expert. But it's just, I think our industry in particular is adopting this thing with both hands out of necessity and curiosity. And I don't know. I mean, maybe that's the keynote that needs to, pop off at LabsCon. I'm debating, but.
Costin, are you doing any AI automation at all in the back end? Any sort of agentic automation with any of your stuff, or all your AI stuff is manual?
How is the manual AI stuff? How does it
Meaning, are
work?
you just like
You
manually
copy-pasting?
Copy pasting.
Is there copy pasting involved? I think that's
Yeah,
the
exactly.
litmus test, right? Like,
There's both. There's both like real automation. In the conclusion, that I have after trying different methods, you need to combine. I think Vitor Ventura also he also talked about this, and I think he did trainings about it. That you need to use the right tools for the right job. Like it will be a lot more effective if you build a chain that processes blogs and information and IOCs and data with the right tools, with pre-filtering, with pre-processing, if you want, before you pass it to the AI, which in in my opinion, the main role is just to be like a wingman for the analyst. So it's something that sits on the side and said, "Hey, I suggest we tag this infrastructure as this and these IPs." And it's your job as an analyst to say, "I agree, I agree, I agree," something like that. Uh, but I think for now it still kind of requires this cyborg approach to things, human plus AI
Right.
plus machine combination, as opposed to letting the AI just do things by itself.
Right.
Which is why I do like really do a lot of copy pasting and translation. Just to give you an example, there's like this Chinese research. That I hope we have some chance to talk about it.
Let's talk about it now.
Well, we can talk about it now. Fantastic. Can you bring it up and like just look what that was about?
Yes, there
Where
is
was that?
a new report out of China. Again, this is Google Translate, so don't hold me
Mm,
to it. But they're talking about silent control, a hidden dismissed ROD X, an active and passive dual mode backdoor that was mischaracterized as a Mirai botnet in systems. And these guys are saying, whoa, 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 hold on a second. This is not Mirai at all. This is the relevant sentence here.
mhm,
Two things. Who is this Chinese company, Costin, and
mhm.
what is the relevance of this? What were you threw this in your system, and what happened?
Well, to answer the second question, I did, and to be honest, there isn't much, which is why it attracted my attention. The other thing is that like I said it before, we need to pay very close attention to what Chinese threat intelligence companies are pushing, because in my opinion, my experience, they do have a lot of very interesting data, but they choose not to write about it. And I see you highlighted the Qianxin
Yeah, what
cyberspace
does that mean?
mapping eagle
What is the
chart.
marking eagle chart? That stood out to me immediately. Is this a signal that this is an eagle somewhere?
It's like the mapping panda activity, right? On the CrowdStrike side of things, this is the mapping eagle chart platform on the Chinese side of things. I don't know what to tell you. It
There
could
will
be
not
like
be a platform gap between us and the Chinese, okay?
uh,
Wait. Let me just ask the question right off the top.
yes.
The conspiracy Ryan question: is this China outing a U.S. operation in your mind, like right off the top?
I tell you one thing. So I looked into this activity. And the network infrastructure, I couldn't connect it to any previously known stuff, but one of the samples I talk about in the blog um, has been mentioned before. I think it was by Palo Alto in relation to something called the liminal panda. Liminal panda is their name for LightBasin or LightBasin activity, which are some interesting folks. I
Mhm.
hear I hear more and more often about these folks, especially
Mhm.
recently. Remember, keep in mind that those guys were doing some uh, iPhone mobile targeting in addition to other things. So I don't know if this is actually China outing liminal panda light basin activity, which would be very strange, but perhaps they didn't have the attribution tools, so they accidentally came by this and they couldn't link it to liminal panda,
Mm,
maybe. Or this
mm.
is something
Or
more
maybe we are
exquisite.
wrong about liminal panda and we shouldn't have put the name panda in the fucking name. Maybe Light Basin
Please
was an
tell
okay
us.
name.
Pray tell us more about Basin, because I know you know more.
I don't know anything. I will
Oh,
say
come on.
that that I have talked about Light Basin in the podcast.
Mhm,
And moreover, I talked about this a lot in relation to um, our LabsCon talks for. So when Alex Milankowski and I, Amitai Ben-Shashan, talked about Metador back in like the OG, like original LabsCon days, then Alex Milankowski talked about something we called Sandman. And what we kept saying is, look, there's these APTs that are using um, they're they're using Lua based tooling. They're using things that look American-y or Western-y in their development, but that other companies are very self-assuredly saying is China. And I am not sure that either of us is fully wrong in that assessment. I think where we're fucking up is that we're insisting that it's a nation state in particular, rather than it being, I don't know, a mercenary PSOA style crew somewhere in Asia that serves a variety of customers that includes the kind of talent that leaves the West with all of their knowledge intact, or may have stolen some American tools, or may have subcontract for some American whatever, like whatever it is. I think the issue here is we saw something sophisticated that was doing telco attacks, and we assumed we were looking at a nation state. And I think the more that you look at these possibly related clusters with Metador and Sandman, this sort of vague, interesting but confusing activity with LightBasin, which I say because CrowdStrike aptly points out that they see two related clusters of LightBasin, and one of them is criminal and the other one is doing espionage. And they didn't know how to resolve some of that stuff. And there's been some good Mandiant reporting on some of the specific clusters in there. But I just think that we've gone at it with the wrong perspective, and it's misshaping the activity rather than us learning from the activity and deciding what the right shape of it is. So seeing this from the Chinese, I think is really interesting, because we're all, if it is related to LightBasin, if we're right about that tooling connecting to that cluster, if we're right that these two things are connected, the activity the Chinese are seeing now, the activity we saw before, then either we're all kind of wrong. Actually, either some of us are fully wrong and others are fully right, or we're all kind of wrong, but it's because we're mischaracterizing the thing we're looking at. I would suggest that this is a PSOA of some sort, that they're based somewhere unusual for us, that they are serving a variety of clients that PSOAs that try to play in the Western game would not readily be able to service. And I suspect, if all of this activity is related the way it looks, that there are Western entities in the middle of it somehow, either doing the development of the tooling or doing some of the operation stuff, or some things were stolen, or they're subcontracting, or whatever the fuck. But I think that LightBasin is one of the most, like LightBasin plus is one of the most interesting clusters out there right now that's not being adequately discussed.
I fully agree. And there's a few other interesting details in this Qianxin blog, including one I see Ryan highlighted, that 3 C2 servers that are still active were discovered, and technical means were used to confirm the existence of uncaught samples in the wild. Now, how I read that, I'm not going to say that I have specific knowledge, but what I have seen in the past is people leverage mechanism to maybe sinkhole a command and control server, and from there convince the victim to upload the malware sample itself to the CNC. So I don't know if this is what they mean here, or the fact that they managed to talk to the CNC or to actually seize or hack into one of the command and control servers. But it's definitely an interesting detail in the report, and it's not very often that you see this being said in a plain fashion in one of these threat intelligence reports.
Hey, shout out to ChinaCon that's happening next week. Hopefully, Juanito, a lot of these things get discussed there. Is that an off-the-record conference, or everything gets published?
It's off the record. Well, I'll say there's no recordings that doesn't get published out, which actually allows for some very, very interesting talks. I think Kristen Del Rosso, our good friend who organizes ChinaCon, even last year was the first year, and she got some amazing, like, policy people who were deeply involved in China, as part of like administrations, who came to like give perspective. And then you had some of the usual suspects who we recognize as like being the authorities on China APT were all there and all speaking. We even had the picture circulated in small groups, but somebody show up in a real PLA uniform, sit in the back taking notes, which I thought was hilarious. But I'm really looking forward to this one. I've told people that I don't give a shit about China. That's not true. I'm more and more fascinated by it, but I'm very ignorant of it. So I've gone through 2 Xi biographies in preparation for this, and I'm looking forward to the talks. I that is very much a conference for me to go in like Zen mind, beginner mind, sit in the back, shut the fuck up for a change, and actually like learn some stuff. So I'm looking forward to having my perspective expanded.
Very good. We are an hour and 15 minutes in, and now we're going to get to our second story. But at least the people got to learn about Costin's system. And the second story here is out of Cyberscope. We got some reporting on Google Threat Intelligence Group, GTIG, previewing what they're calling a cyber disruption unit within the context of this conversation of like being more aggressive, attack, hack back, defense forward, whatever you want to call it. Juanito, you got a thought on what this disruption unit will look like? Are we likely to just be seeing the same types of things that Microsoft has been actively doing with takedowns, partnering with law enforcement on taking things offline, malware removal type things? What do you think this disruption unit will be, and who's the market for this? Like, who are they selling this to?
The U.S. government. So I have very complicated feelings about this story, and I think that this is one of those stories that people put down on paper, and I think they expect me to quite predictably come and like shit all over it and talk about how stupid it is and to judge it and whatnot. And
this is right up your alley. You've been asking for this stuff.
well, I have, but I think on different terms than would be expected for the terms that are being discussed here. So if you don't mind me kind of like expanding on this a little bit, if you just read the headline and say like cyber disruption unit, you're like, okay. And frankly, there's almost a discussion to be had about like, why weren't you disrupting these things before if you had the capability to? And that's a valid conversation to have. And I don't think most big companies have a good answer to that. And that's why we've been jumping up and down on top of them for many, many years, because some companies in the form of empowered individuals have been doing God's work for years now without any recognition whatsoever, and disrupting things on the basis of their private sector positioning, capabilities, ability, or just the willingness to lean forward. So we've always looked at the mega giants who have all this access and capability, and they control half of the internet, and they can, sneeze and like blow some shit up, and not doing much of any of that always felt like just this egregious abnegation of responsibility. So I would like to set that aside and not talk about the ills of the past and not judge people on what has happened before, but simply to say, okay, I think it's cool that you are interested in doing this and you should do it. So I actually fully support the idea of this happening. Now, we would be naive and only be looking at, we'd be naive to focus on the marketing copy of it without wondering why now? Like, why now? And the answer is quite obvious, and it's even mentioned in the same article. This is a discussion that's popping up around this idea of letters of marque. And that makes me partially more jaded about it, but only insofar as I mistrust the intentions of the people who are pushing it forward. However, that does not make me doom the effort or judge the effort or criticize the effort, because I think that if those people use their political capital, if people like Sandra Joyce use their political capital to move Google towards the idea of being more actively engaged in disrupting adversary operations and limiting damage, because they think, perhaps, I won't speak for Sandra's thinking, I don't know it, but perhaps because they think that this is the beginning of a gold rush into cyber offensive operations that will be enabled by the US government finally, finally in quotes, then whether that happens or not, I think you ultimately have to play the game we've been wanting them to play as responsible stewards of the internet on the way to trying to become, I guess, an offensive contractor, which I think you're going to have all kinds of interesting questions about being defense companies, like security companies that do offensive ops. You're going to have all kinds of interesting questions about, what's actually happening with the data that like goes into one side and ends up in the other. Um, I don't think they're all. I don't think they're discussions that are bad, that are like poisoned in and of themselves. I just think that all of a sudden the people who want to be successful in this are going to go from lawyered up to the point where they couldn't take a piss without somebody standing next to them and approving of it, to all of a sudden very permissive and mentally flexible about what the policies and privacy implications and whatever the fucks, that used to be these impossible lines will all of a sudden be very fungible. And you're going to see companies twisting themselves into a pretzel to represent themselves as something that before they would have denied they ever were. And where that takes us, if I wrote in 2015 that we were, intelligence brokers because we were selling intelligence, then I think we're going to have to start getting very comfortable with being defense contractors if that's what we think we're selling. And I'm not saying that's a bad look necessarily. I'm not saying that's not something you want. It's clearly not going to keep certain companies who think that this is just the opening of a hackback market of some sort that they haven't tapped before. Sure, go for it. This industry needs revitalizing somehow. If that's how you think that you're going to like get your money, cool. But there will be another identity crisis here. And I'm very curious how you keep, like, if we thought the culture at Google and Microsoft and Amazon was fucking with the security space, I ask you to consider what the culture at Raytheon, Lockheed, and BAE looks like when it comes to this shit.
Costin, you see, I mean, I'm trying to understand the market. You said US government right off the bat. Like, if you're doing disruption and takedowns, I mean, how many of those are we hearing or seeing in a year when they're going? One, two, what's the time on something like this? Like, why are you chasing after this market? One, and two, if you're Google, you're like kind of one of the few companies who can do this though, with the kind of data they have. We just talked about it with VT, Project Zero, add in tag, add Mandiant in there. You feel like, okay, they have like the richness of everything to be able to do this. Do you feel, Costin, thoughts on it? Do you see disruption unit? It obviously flags some concerns.
Well, look, Microsoft perhaps was the most prominent player in this field with their digital crimes unit, which has been super, super active over the years, doing exactly this disruption, in the sense of trying to seize domains through court orders, so leveraging lawyers, leveraging a lot of expensive resources to disrupt cyber criminal activity. So here, again, would be nice to have someone from Google, from TIG or TIG, who can actually speak specifically about this topic and what they're gonna do. But one of the kind of immediate benefits that I foresee from doing this is very positive PR. So whenever Microsoft was doing one of these shutdowns, either let's say trying to disrupt SofaSea, for instance, or different botnets and cyber criminal malware and seizing infrastructure, it was all very well received. Now I hear you, and you were asking before, you were asking the question, why aren't more companies doing that? And I can tell you at least why we were doing this at my previous job, is because it is extremely expensive to leverage very well highly paid lawyers to draft all these court orders and subpoenas and whatnots to try to seize malicious infrastructure, which is in one way, targeting our customers. So because of that, we want it. I think that big, large US companies like Microsoft, like Google, they're better positioned to do it, while other players, I don't know, like not American companies, it may be more difficult for them. So if you're playing like strictly in the legal space, this is one of the things you can do. In particular, I quote Sandra Joyce, which is she related to Rob Joyce?
I don't think
Just
so.
random question, maybe
I don't.
just coincidence.
I asked that question before, and I think they're not, but I can't speak to it.
So she said, yeah, they want to do legal and ethical disruption. So what legal? It's pretty clear. Ethical disruption could be, I don't know, like if I do some very complex requests into a command and control server and it crashes, is it ethical? Maybe, I don't know. Obviously, if I hack into the CNC and wipe it, that don't know if that is ethical. But again, there are many shades of gray of things you can do with command and control servers, as Silas can probably tell us even better. So I don't know what Google will effectively do, but I lean more towards the legal side of things in the style of DCU and in the style of seizing infrastructure, shutting down the main CNCs, and disrupting these operations like big botnets, essentially, that affect pretty much everyone on the internet.
This may not have
I
commercial ambitions. I think you guys might have nailed it on
Mm.
on the head in saying that, hey, Google is ceding this entire thing to Microsoft, who keep getting the DCU, and Microsoft and Justice Department keep getting these takedown
Yeah.
headlines, and Google is left in the dark, and they're saying, hey, I have Mandiant, I have VT, I have all this data, we can be doing this. It may
They
not be a
just
big
suck
commercial
ass
thing.
at PR, dude. Like the biggest, honestly, like this is the lack of like successful marketing w- at GCP, at like the Google Cloud side of things and Google Cloud security, is a cultural problem, uh, and it's a shame because you can see that even when you get people like John Holquist and a bunch of really great Mandiant analysts who were doing amazing PR value, just doing what they do every day, and then you buy them into Google, they stop producing any, like, a lot of that PR value. And I don't think it's because they got lazier or they decided they didn't want to do it anymore. I think it's because you have this weird policy and culture and like way around this that you that just takes away from that happening. uh, but I say that it's a PR problem because if you look at it as like, well, you're letting Microsoft get all the gains and do all the like soft power politicking. Yeah, in some way that Microsoft has done it more effectively, in large part because they tend to empower people more and are a little more like more, not a lot, but more, right? Like you do have like Dave Weston can come out and speak to his side of things. So and so can come out, and speak to John Lambert can go and speak to security widely. Like Brad Smith will show up to places and talk about, big Microsoft and this is what we think and can do. And Google just has a much harder time with stuff like that, sadly. Now, I actually think the commercial question makes a gigantic fucking difference here in a way that I'm not saying these people aren't thinking of. I'm saying that they're softballing it in a way that I don't know that they're thinking the argument through all the way, or they're not having to publicly because the dust hasn't settled. But let me paint a scenario for you. There's disruption, and then there's disruption enabled by what would be considered hacking or illegal activity of some sort. And we've talked about how like the bar is insanely low when it comes to US law. So I'm not saying hacking in an incendiary way. I'm saying like in like the dumbass DOJ way of like you have the username and password, this is being used for command and control. You could walk in, grab data, delete things, disable things, whatever. But if you use somebody's username and password without authorization, you're going to jail, buddy, right? Like that bullshit definition of hacking. So if I can disrupt things without hacking, then the question is not about the ethics of how do you do it ethically, but actually how do you ethically defend not doing it and not having done it up until this point, right? And I say any and all activity that the cyber disruption unit would do that had no requirement for legal stuff, which there's actually a lot when you're a company like Google, because you control DNS routing, because you control search indexing, because you control email filters, because you control like a million different things. Google Drive, the routing of certain, share links, like all kinds of shit. CAPTCHA data, safe browsing data, Chrome data, right? Like you have so much shit. At the ad network data that Google has is probably the greatest intelligence mine in the world. So these people are going to find that they can disrupt all kinds of shit if they actually want to, and the lawyers get the fuck out of the way for a change. But then the question is, what is the ethical valence of not doing it? And that's why I gave Shane Huntley so much shit about his offensive con talk a few years back, which I called like the politics of hand-wringing, because like the idea was if you do things, then you're responsible for them. And God forbid you have any responsibility for anything, so maybe choose not to do things. And you're like, well, okay, I see how we got here. Thank you for your time. Now, cut over. When you admit that you could be disrupting things, the question becomes, well, why wouldn't you? And I'm asking that because there's two variations here, right? What happens if you do hack things? What does that allow you to do, right? That you weren't able to do before. Cool. That depends on like what the letters of marque thing is, what the new policy thing is. But let's assume that doesn't happen at all. Or let's assume that it does happen in whatever asinine terms. And then the question becomes, what's the offering? Because I ask you, right? I am a company that got hacked. I am willing to pay Google, Mandiant, Raytheon to like hack whatever the fuck to disrupt this activity, to do, to get at the ransomware crew that got me. Does that mean that they hack and protect me, but not the other victims of the ransomware group? Does that mean that I pay to disrupt the thing, but you disrupt it for everybody else? Does that mean that if I ask you to do it, but then I'm like, actually, this is too expensive, I'm not going to pay for it, that you have the access to disrupting it, but you choose not to, right? Like, it's suddenly no longer a good faith defenders of the internet, defenders of everyone's privacy. We do good things because they're good things and we're good people, therefore we do good things. All of a sudden, it's a fucking business. And I ask you, how are you going to market that? What are you comfortable saying about like, well, we could save all these people right now, but it's going to cost you, right? Like, and that is a business model, but it requires you to answer some uncomfortable fucking questions.
Hey, the fact that Sandra went to a conference and announced this, and Google guys are in the background obviously building and preparing for this, suggests that there might be contracts coming down the pipe. Like some lobbyist somewhere says, hey, get prepped for this because the government is going to start handing out whatever you call it, letter of marque, whatever it is. Someone in Google is clear that there's a business here. If we put aside that this is a PR thing where they don't want to be left behind. Costin, some closing thoughts on this?
I think either way, this is a very cool initiative. It would be nice if other companies were doing the same, either for PR purposes or whatever. If you remember the DCU initiatives, they actually started a lot of very interesting things, including events, conferences, information sharing. So all of that, kind of advances the overall goal for everyone of things to be better, safer, and so on. Now, if this will have a commercial angle, I don't know that, but I am even happy if it's just like for PR purposes.
You're cool with it. You're into
I'm
this
cool with
disruption
it.
activity, yeah.
Just one thing, probably this is gonna cost money, and you are saying like, why haven't been doing this for before? I think it takes approval at the top, and people will always say like, what are we getting in exchange? and sometimes it's difficult to explain this positive PR angle when there's like no money involved. Like, yeah, we're gonna get some kind of good vibes and cookie points from the community, and unfortunately, I see this in a lot of companies that the leadership doesn't understand the value of these cookie points in the community, and the respect from other companies and from your colleagues, which in my opinion is super, super valuable. Of course, like Google Tick doesn't need like additional respect, but nevertheless, let's not forget that Google's kind of motto is do no evil, try to do things the right
No, that
way.
used to be the motto.
It
That's
used to
not.
be the motto.
They don't not do evil anymore. So
I don't know,
just
man.
they changed it expressly. They said,
It's
it's
officially
not
changed, yeah.
it's
It's
no
no
longer the
longer
motto.
it's
It's
no
no
longer do no
longer.
evil. I see.
Yeah, yeah,
The
Yeah, these
times
companies are
the
running it.
times we
This
live
whole
nowadays.
do no evil thing. Microsoft is running into its issues with protests on site for Azure being used in certain places and so on. So that is a whole other
Well,
world
that
that we
that's the
haven't gotten a chance
Palantir
to.
argument, right? Like, and that was the Alex Karp's book about like the Technologic Republic, which in a way was like a fucking shilling manifesto for Palantir, but he had some points, right? Like if you read the book, which you don't have to, but the discussion was essentially to say this whole tech sector developed on the basis of government investment from the age of like Vannevar Bush on down here, and then you guys get really huge and capable and powerful and mega rich, and all of a sudden you are looking down on the defense of the US as a cause. Like, you're like, fuck yeah, no, we don't do AI for the Defense Department. We don't do anything to do with drones. We don't share data with the government. We don't what like you're like that's a when you put it that way, when you look at it that way, the idea of marketing yourselves like these big companies marketing themselves as global companies is a really convenient way of skirting serving the defense of the United States, which is the country where they, ostensibly operate the most, where they started, where they were born, where they took investment from the government, where they took government contracts to get to the point they're at now, where, et cetera. Until China or Russia or somebody comes to fuck with them, then they're American companies. Then they're super fucking American companies. And what Alex Karp, I think, is rightly pointing out is, look, you've always had skin in the game. You were just bitching out of it. You were finding ways to pretend you didn't. I think what's gonna be really interesting about this, like, I'm not judging Sandra Joyce's initiative or the disruption unit. I think this is a great idea. I think they should do it and figure out where the boundaries are and figure out what it means to be a responsible controller, regent of a whole swath of the fucking internet and multiple software ecosystems, et cetera. What does it mean to be that responsibly and ethically? And if that entails a line of business, then good for them. Make some fucking money along the way. But it will require them to get serious about certain questions that I think Alex Karp is talking about, with like what your responsibility is to the nation, to the internet, to the people, to whatever, to democracy, to Western values, uncomfortable things that we don't want to talk about when we have manufacturing in China. And I think once you introduce this whole hackback and we do it for money thing, you're suddenly going to have a lot more respect for the PR departments at Lockheed and Raytheon, Mantech, whatever, which usually keep their mouths shut, but that are very unequivocal about who they are and what they do. Because being a defense contractor is a much hairier business, and you don't get to hide behind like your, googly bullshit or corporate bullshit or Microsoft stonewalling or whatever, because now you're saying the quiet part out loud. Just get prepared, man.
I wanted to flag another story that's making news. Nothing big or significant, but it's along the lines of some things that we've been talking about over the last 10, 15 episodes of the podcast, which is detecting and countering misuse of AI. We got a report out of Anthropic on their threat intelligence report for August 2025, and I want to flag one thing that they're calling attention to, which is the actor used AI to what we believe is an unprecedented degree. Claude code was used to automate reconnaissance, harvesting victim credentials, and penetrating networks. Claude was allowed to make both tactical and strategic decisions, such as deciding which data to orchestrate and how to craft psychologically targeted extortion demands. None of this is surprising that threat actors are going to be in this space. But what do you make of Anthropic as the gate for spotting this and flagging it? And what about this stands out to you, Juan?
I've given Anthropic a lot of shit, and actually I kind of want to apologize for that in a sense, because I've been giving them a lot. I've been giving Anthropic as a company a lot of shit about what a subset of, you know, AI doomers think about what the future of AI is. However, as a Claude Max subscriber and enthusiastic Claude code user, they're building a great product, and they're really owning and cornering a specific side of that market in a valuable way. And when I see them put this out, I'm reminded that they do have security talent, folks like Wim out there who like have worked with us before, are doing cool shit. And more importantly, I see this as them taking the cybersecurity angle seriously, them taking the intelligence angle of it seriously, because most of the value of at least up to this point of being a frontier lab in the middle of potential like malicious activity is the intelligence collection value. The same way that, going back to Google, right? Like before Gemini, Google had this intelligence, like X-raying somebody's brain power by virtue of their positioning. Because I'll tell you what, if I can read your Google search history, I don't care about your emails, I don't care about your calendar, I don't care about, if I can read your Google search history, if I can look at what you're searching for at any given time, and that's your main mechanism for existing, which it was mine for like 15 fucking years, you can tell just about everything about what a person is thinking at any given moment. And consider that your browser bar was also searching and like all that shit. And I'm not hyper-indexing on Google. I'm saying that was really valuable to know what people were thinking back in the Google searching days, with fragments of tidbits of what you were saying. Anthropic, OpenAI, Google Gemini are sitting on literal conversations that express intent, that have duration, that produce artifacts, that get debugged over a period of time. Like whenever an attacker is using these things, I think it's fucking phenomenal, because it might be the first time that you can sit at like the development table or the operational table of some of these actors and just have a conversation with them and go, what are you trying to do? What? Oh, they were trying to fix. Oh, you were trying to debug this bit. Like, imagine the intelligence that people gleaned from the old Turla Agent BTC days, because they figured out that Vlad, Gil, Yurik were on certain forums asking about debugging certain components that were specific to Agent BTZ and like old Turla drivers. And like just that, being able to connect those things was like, oh my God, like we can get into the mind of these people. And it was like a bunch of fucking forum posts from like 10 years ago. Well, what is it like when you can see an Iranian operator's conversation about like, oh, I really need this thing to do that. I'm having an issue with this thing. And you know what time it was happening. Like it's an admission of like operational development and tempo. So we really do need them to play ball. And I guess that's my really long-winded way of saying that I'm hugely standing Anthropic for getting into the threat intel cybersecurity side of things seriously, for not making it entirely about this information, which is not a dig at OpenAI. I love the work Ben Nemo's doing, and we know Dave Vitale is out there doing real cybersecurity shit, but I love seeing Anthropic come into it and like throw their hat in the ring with a strong one, like right off the bat, and basically saying that they are a player on the cybersecurity, on the security side, and that they want to play. Because like, I think, like, sorry, the last bit there is, this is my personal vendetta, and the more I talk about it, the more this is like likely going to be my keynote at LabsCon. I think that cybersecurity has to reinvent itself through the means of AI in some kind of like cybernetics discussion.
Let me put you full screen. Go.
But this motherfucker's trying to like get the clip going. No. I don't want to plug it. I don't want to spoil it, but I have said it many times on here. I think there was a limitation, a systematic limitation in capacity, in autonomous ability, in our ability to automate things that meant that the project of cybersecurity was never going to meaningfully scale. Never. We were fighting against a boundary for which our human limitation was just ill-suited. And I cannot, up until this point and until Neuralink or whomever the fuck figures out how to do it, you cannot increase the, let's say, token throughput of a human brain. There's only so much thinking and managing of attention that you can do. There's the limitations of how consistently smart a person is, what context they have by virtue of their education, how they're feeling, have they been fed, are they awake, are they sleeping? There's all kinds of ways in which, as humans, we are limited in our ability to produce evaluative power, and we are inconsistent in its production. So having agents, like, yes, it's AI hype, whatever the fuck you want, I don't care. Up until this point of AI development, we have been able, or as a society, as a species, we have been able to create a certain greater level of autonomy that can be deployed, parallelized, fed by electricity, reproduced infinitely, that changes the ROI calculation for the kind of work that is worth investing into, that is worth doing. Because when it needed a human being, it never made any sense, right? I will not take someone with a certain level of ability and knowledge and a limited amount of time and put them to manually classify every blog that comes in to see if it has IOCs, if it's interesting, is it about China, is it about Russia, is it about whatever, which, like, little things like that, you go, yeah, but how important is that? Well, actually, it is important when you start talking about, like, how do we structure all of our historical data? How do we systematically follow the same intelligence production processes for everything we ingest? How do we know that we can rely on the data that we have? In many ways, this was the promise of Recorded Future. They knew, as like former CIA people, that you do need that kind of like analytical fabric. The problem is the technology wasn't there, and they sure as shit weren't selling it, but they had the idea and they were promising the right thing. What my argument now, and this is a very long-winded and ridiculous tangent, is we are getting there. We have gotten there to a certain degree. And even if all AI development stops today, where we are today, it just will not get any better for another 20 years. We just got to settle with, like, this is AI, like, for now. The cybersecurity industry has gotten the tools to scale up in its management of the problem to a degree that was impossible before 2022. And that shit is not small. Considering that we were a failed project that was not going to be able to operate at the scope we needed for the problem we have at hand, and the problem is only getting bigger, we need to not be excited about AI. We need to reinvent our entire industry in terms of what you can do with increased autonomy, and not be worried about losing jobs and not be worried about any of that shit. We should be worried that up until this point, the best that we could do with everybody who put their hands in it was not very much, and should instead be willing to cut that carcass out and say, fuck it. This is the moment to, like, reinvent ourselves through this. So I'm glad OpenAI has been playing. They have a very specific focus with what they're doing. I trust Dave Aitel, Matt Knight, those guys to, like, build some cool shit. There's no way a single company is going to approach this. And I think for something as complex as cybersecurity, domain expertise is going to matter way more than the AI part of it. It's just about putting the right features and capacity and capabilities together in service of figuring out what AI for security means and how you actually do that meaningfully. And frankly, like, it's my project. Like, it's what I want Sentinel Labs to be doing for the next 5 years. It's what I want Sentinel-1, which is a company that has promised itself as like the AI company in cybersecurity. I think it's in our mission to be the ones experimenting and like kicking the tires on this shit and saying, this works better. This, we can do this that we couldn't do that before, blah, blah, blah. That's the mission as far as I'm concerned for the next few years.
Before we jump off, we got some breaking news. Amazon just published a blog post that you have up on the screen there. Nobody got a chance to prepare, so we're going to respond to it very live. Amazon disrupting a waterhole campaign from APT 29, Midnight Blizzard, threat actor associated to the SVR. We got some news here that Amazon themselves is participating in this space, just going back to the GTIG thing a second ago. So I'm just looking at this live. Any thoughts quickly, Costin? Are you familiar with this watering hole campaign?
Is there like any IOCs in there?
There we go.
Do we get anything?
We got
Something, I don't know.
Moses.
I haven't seen it. Ooh, YARA rule. Is that the YARA rule?
Since when?
Is that the YARA rule or what is it? Sample
where's the link?
JavaScript code. Oh, indicators. Find Cloudflare.
Breaking news 6 hours ago. I see. Yeah.
We just saw it.
I've seen this domain before.
Check the system. Check the system, Costin. Give it to us live, man.
I'm checking the system live, man.
Check the system live.
I'm checking it live.
Come on, customers are waiting.
Cloudflare.partners.com, lure victims into Microsoft's device code authentication workflows.
Somebody, Ryan's gonna love this. Someone in the chats, in the YouTube chat stream, is saying 3-buddy problem, 24-hour stream. Bro, we can't break the 3-hour mark. These gentlemen are like, how, we need to go pee. Like, we can pause it. We can break. We can pass the mic. Costin goes to the bathroom.
Even Joe Rogan breaks.
Even Joe Rogan breaks. But Joe Rogan's getting high. He's having a good time. I haven't seen, I don't see you guys hitting that.
You guys are too, right?
Before we got sidetracked with the APT 29 Amazon thing, Costin, quickly, I wanted you to give a closing thoughts on the Claude Anthropic blog post and the Frontier Labs as the threat intel providers, as the guys on the ground doing the watching of that. Is that where you see a business model for those guys? Is there room for private sector to be involved in that in some way? How do you see like monetizing that and the ability to and the effort that they put into making sure they're like publishing these reports on a monthly basis about what they're seeing?
I mean, look, this report, including the PDF file, because there's like this summary and then there's like this extensive PDF file, which in my opinion is maybe the best report to date coming out of these AI companies, is maybe perhaps the most thorough, extensive, and full of details that I have seen. And been a few other reports in the past, right, from OpenAI, from other companies. But this one, it kind of, it in a certain, what attracted my attention the most, or what raised my interest, is felt like the silence of 10 years ago, like the silent 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, what was going on? Malware developers, they were installing antivirus products on their computers. They would bring home the code from work, be it NSA or whatever. They just play with it on their laptops, and they don't realize there's like silent detections and all that stuff gets sent to the antivirus providers. That was like I don't think they were supposed to be
doing that, Costin. Then I think some of them went to jail for that. But I agree.
Yes, but it was, and people realized, so they stopped installing antivirus products on their laptops. And they still didn't realize there's Windows Defender, and like that's like the next stage. Windows Defender, like on the laptop, and Microsoft has all that visibility information, and and then they realize that is happening as well. So now the cycle happens again with AIs, and in particular, there's two cases in this report which I think they're very cool. One is about the Chinese APT targeting Vietnam. They don't specifically say which group that is, but it's visibility into their activities. It's like the new these are like the new silence of our age. It's like the new iteration in silence. It's effectively having an inside view into what the APT groups or malware developers are doing with the AI from the AI side of things.
Silence
So
were a lot more
it's
controversial, though.
yes, what?
Because silence is what got
But
Juanito. Silence is what got you guys into
oh,
trouble in
like
the early days.
it's the
But
same.
silence may have gotten us into trouble in like the way folks were discussing things, but that
It
was
hasn't stopped anybody from doing it
no, no,
anyway.
no, no. It's not that. It shouldn't have stopped anybody, and it should not have been controversial in the first place. That was people drumming up their like the discomfort that we feel with not knowing what all software is doing inside of our systems at a granular level. But
Mm.
frankly, it was an idiotic misunderstanding that was fostered by people who wanted to discuss a controversial story, and we're more than welcome to talk about their discomfort with Kaspersky, with the use of a foreign AV, with the research we were doing. That was all valid. You can think about it however you want. However, focusing on silent detections was like a really dumb way to go about that, because anyone who has worked in any private sector cybersecurity offering knows that that is an essential mechanism if you're doing any kind of detection, not classification. Classification means I can tell you what this is. I'm not doing anything about it. You are welcome to do whatever you want with it. And at that point, you can be completely transparent if you want with showing things. When you're doing detection, you need to know that, this new thing that we created, this new signature, this new engine, this new ML model, this new whatever is accurate in situ. And you don't have everybody's data, and you don't have, somehow some way to mirror every millions of endpoints in your fleet to see if this new detection is going to, I don't know, blue screen half of the fucking planet overnight, or DDoS the entire SOC, or it's a detection that worked well today and doesn't work tomorrow. Every cybersecurity product has some kind of silent detection mechanism, just as part of like testing their research rules in ways of trying to figure out if something is spamming, in order to figure out what behavioral detections you can turn on, in order, like, there's all kinds of silent mechanisms. So that judgment on KL, I understand that they
What made
added
it
some nuance to
controversial?
it.
Let's get to
Well,
the nitty-gritty of what actually made it controversial, though, because you're
what made
describing
it
all the positive benefits of doing it.
no, it's not the positive benefits. It's like it's literally how the fuck these systems work, and somebody tried to make it sound nefarious. Now, what I will say, not to be naive, is I don't think that the U.S. government was putting all their cards on the table, and they were latching on to arguments that were more readily accessible, that meant that they didn't need to reveal their actual sources and methods and intents. And so I don't think that it's an accurate representation of everybody's of everything they knew, of the reason they were doing things. And frankly, that could mean that, hell, maybe they didn't even have a very legitimate reason for going at KL, other than they didn't like our research. They didn't like Costin, me, and other people burning US ops. They didn't like Eugene. They didn't like the spread of Kaspersky's global reach, the same way that we're uncomfortable with Huawei's global reach. Like, there's all kinds of valid national security reasons why they could have chosen to do that. Then there's, and again, not to be naive, then there's also the possibility that the US government full on knew that something terrible was happening at Kaspersky. And frankly, it was a 5,000 person company when we were there. We were but 50 fucking people doing our part of things. We can speak to what we saw. We can't speak to whatever the fuck the rest of the company was doing. And if the US government saw some insane shit, okay, like, I'll give them that. However, the way we went about it was, or the way the US government went about it, was essentially to try to make boogeymen out of things that anybody who works in this industry knows is just not what they're presenting it as. So I think that there's the real reason, and then there's the publicly palatable argument, and the two don't seem to have quite as much overlap as others might think.
You view what Anthropic and OpenAI are doing on the early monitoring side as along the lines of silence, like Costin
No,
does?
no, not at all. I not at all. I think that I think of it the way that I think of what Google Tag was doing. I think of it the way of like what certain parts of Microsoft for sure were doing, where you have something that someone inputs a lot of information into and gains a lot of information out of that is telling of what those people are doing. You have a very real privacy remit that you need to abide by, especially the frontier companies, right? Like no one's going to talk to the agent the same way. If I think Dave Itel's reading every one of my messages, I'm certainly going to curtail a little bit of the things that I ask, right? Like it changes how you interact with the thing. And I think these companies take that very seriously. So what it then becomes is like, they need to be better about the intelligence side of things in order to have signals of what things need to get taken out of the mega privacy bucket and put somewhere else for analysis. And then you go, oh shit, look at what the North Koreans are doing with Claude Code. Oh shit, look at what, you know, the Iranians are doing with this other, you know, with Opus and like coding and artifacts. And that's just part of, frankly, like that is just part of becoming a mature, big company that has skin in the game, that has a scale of users that is actually central somehow, and realizing that you can't just bury your head in the sand. People are going to abuse what you're building, and pretending that they're not and hiding behind GDPR or whatever the fuck is a bullshit cop-out, and it makes you a shitty partner on the internet. So like these people are they're getting to the point we knew they were gonna have to get to. But I'm proud of like a company like Anthropic doing this, because the easier choice is to go the Apple route and just throw your hands up and go, oh, privacy is so private that we want to privacy all the private things, and therefore we're too privacyed out to unprivacy
We end up with lockdown mode bullshit.
Yeah, and you're like, so we're just not going to look. Look, we built you a panic room. You're going to love it. Lock yourself in there. You'll be fine.
With Costin.
Like, yeah, just Costin is in there. He's made the place super nice. You're going to love it. So I think this is great. I hope this means that, I hope this is a signal that Anthropic is mirroring OpenAI and deciding to get serious about their applications in security, along with what looks like a competent threat intel approach.
Costin, you see any sort of ethical, legal things there that flags in your mind? You raised this. You raised the silence issue. Wrap up this conversation for me.
I raise the silence issue because I think this kind of highlights one of those cycles. So what will happen here is people will realize that their development, malicious code development with Claude and whatever is being watched, is being monitored. So they're just gonna stop doing that, and they're gonna move either to local models or different models, or let's just try to anonymize the whole thingy. And I think it's it's just like a normal cycle of life in threat intelligence, malware research, monitoring, and whatnot. And in particular, I think this tells a lot about Anthropic, because if you're a threat intelligence company, then you don't want to expose these kind of capabilities. That's why people don't talk about silence. They don't want to spook the threat actors from using their platform. Now, Anthropic doing this, it tells me that they want these people away from their platform. See, they just don't want to deal with this shit. They just don't want people using Claude to develop malware. So the moment that you start exposing that, everyone will freak out and they'll just get the hell out of using Anthropic to do all these things, including, again, we're talking here about serious APT actors. So there's like silent Kolima or Cholima or whatever. So there's like the big guys.
Like North Korean guys as well listed in there?
Yeah, sure. Like the big guys leveraging these capabilities do their operations, which is again the level of visibility from using LLMs. In my opinion, it beats the hell out of everything that was possible with silence back in the days. Like this is like having like
A cheat sheet, like
an
a Claude mode
analyst
cheat
in the
sheet.
same room with the bad guy looking over his shoulder at everything that he's doing. So it's
Like
like
getting to be
maybe
the
in the
Dutch
same
for a
range.
day.
Yeah, like being the Dutch for a day, correct?
The Dutch for a day.
I actually, it's an interesting question. I don't know, Costin. Like I don't disagree with what you're saying. I've made the same argument myself. About like, you know, the way that I used to put it was like, this is a trust and safety problem for as long as these people, like attackers, have to use the frontier models, right? And as Costin said, right, if you really feel like you're being monitored, all that stuff, like you're going to switch to local models. Okay, that is a sort of imposition of cost that is interesting in this universe, that it's not the same for when we were talking about like search and other like normal systems. Because if you couldn't search on Google, yeah, that's kind of an impairment. But like DuckDuckGo was a search engine that would give you about the same, right? Or like if you wanted to just fucking, I don't know, use Bing or whatever, if something's wrong with you, if somebody really hurt you and you wanted to use Bing, right? Like you would more or less get the same results at this point. With the AI side of things, the question is like, well, how much better is Claude Code? How much better is GPT-5, Codex, etc., that you're impairing them by them not getting to use the latest models, not getting to use the online version of whatever? And I would say it is a sizable difference, and you do, at least for the time being, and you do have to kind of harness and figure out how the system works. Like there is like a cost imposition to trying to figure out how to do this with local models, and you're not going to get as good results. I think the other side of it is this kind of quashes your visibility to some degree, and it forces them to adapt. I don't need the thing to remember here is like there is a fraud and abuse aspect to them using these systems. I don't think Silent Kalima and the North Koreans are paying for Claude Max accounts. They are almost certainly finding ways to steal tokens, to use credit card fraud, to steal people's accounts, to steal API. And it means that for them, there is a cost. Token generation cost is not so low that you're comfortable with a lot of fraud. And if these people are using it in any meaningful way that isn't just like, you know, I'm saying like, let's say DPR KIT workers, if Claude Code is doing most of the work the DPR KIT workers are doing, and they're doing it on the basis of like fraudulent accounts, then this is costing Anthropic a fuck ton of money. Like I pay $200 a month for Claude Code at max, because if not, after a certain amount of hours, they limit you, and like you start getting throttled to the lower model and all that stuff. So if the North Korean IT workers need Claude Code and they're doing that shit like on the basis of stolen creds and APIs and whatnot, or stolen credit cards, that has got to be costing them a whole lot, like Anthropic, a whole lot of fucking money, as it would OpenAI, because token generation is not so cheap right now that you're just giving it away.
And there's no doubt that there's an executive at Anthropic, OpenAI, looking for business models for cybersecurity, tap into cybersecurity market. So
there's
no,
obvious ones.
There's
I don't- I think
just
Costin
imagine building like a virus total where you can hunt in all these queries that people are running, like
That's why
deploying
when you
YARA
say-
rules.
That's why when you say, I think Anthropic want to kick these motherfuckers off their platform, I think you're wrong. I think Anthropic wants to be able to watch them and sell that visibility.
Then they would share this report privately with the industry and have a platform ready, you know, for subscriptions.
Marketing has to market first. You know how it goes. By the way, Costin, we are way past the 2-hour mark, and I gotta wrap. Oh, absolutely. We're 2 hours and 10 minutes in, and I want to wrap up this show.
Is this the 4-hour episode you wanted to do?
I thought
Is this like
you were about to say
But-
that you need to take a bio break.
I need a bio break, but like a permanent one. But a permanent one today. Costin, we started off the show, and last week you spent a lot of time on your iOS setup, making sure you're in lockdown mode, turning off FaceTime, turning off iMessage. Do you use WhatsApp on iOS?
What's
Because
that?
that's very, very popular there in the in Europe is WhatsApp on iOS, and I flag it because we have fresh news this morning, another bit of breaking news on a new WhatsApp. Oh, they exploited in the wild. The folks from Amnesty International are tweeting. I'll share some of the links in a second, but Amnesty International tweeting that they are tracking this situation. Feels like one of those big commercial spyware operations here. Is WhatsApp for iOS popular over there? Is this something you would be paying attention to, or do you already delete WhatsApp? What's the profile?
Around here, WhatsApp is the equivalent of iMessage in the States, meaning that everybody uses WhatsApp, and if you don't have WhatsApp, you can't do anything. Like for school, for kindergarten, for basically anything, like even just living in this apartment building complex, they have WhatsApp groups. Your neighbors have WhatsApp groups, quarter, everything, they all have WhatsApp groups. So it's like super, super popular. Everything these days in Europe, or at least in
WhatsApp
here,
is
on
basically
WhatsApp.
like the BlackBerry Messenger stand-in. You remember like when BBM was like the thing
Right.
everyone in like all of Africa, Latin America, Europe
Correct.
used, and then the
Correct.
US moved past it because of the iPhones. But it's almost like a natural corollary. Even look at how judgmental we are about like, oh, when I message you, do you have a blue message box or a green one because you're on Android? Like that's why WhatsApp is as popular as it is everywhere else.
And not only in Europe, but all throughout Latin America. I remember when we were in Argentina, we were booking restaurant reservations on WhatsApp. WhatsApp for business was a very popular thing.
I've had to get customer support for El Al flights in Israel through WhatsApp agents. Like that's the only way I could get an answer.
And
sorry,
like
Costin, go ahead.
You were showing something very, very interesting. Just in this screenshot, actually, it's as well. They say that actually this WhatsApp vulnerability that allowed a device to essentially load an URL automatically, zero-click load of an URL. And that URL, I think that is the best part, was actually exploiting CVE 2025-43300, which is that ImageIO vulnerability that we talked about in the previous episode. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
That required the DNG TIFF file, and the one
went over it in the last episode.
Yes, and Matt Swish, he wrote this detector tool, Elegant Bouncer. I think Hamid also helped with it. And now we understand that these two were chained together in order to achieve this zero-click infection functionality.
You mentioned it had to have been part of a chain. So that was Apple patching their ImageIO component, and now we're seeing probably the infection vector.
This is how it was triggered in like zero-click manner through WhatsApp. So this authorization, incomplete authorization of link device synchronization, that's a mouthful, could have allowed an unrelated user to trigger processing of content from an arbitrary URL. So that's like the remote loading of the URL on the device, and then there's the OS ImageIO exploit vulnerability that leads to remote code execution. So yeah. And another thing is that, WhatsApp is notifying victims. So if you can check your WhatsApp accounts, if you receive this notification, I can check mine right now on one of my devices.
And this is, I'm sharing on the screen what this notification looks like. It's basically WhatsApp notifying its users that they're...
Oh, is that now? Should I check?
Yeah, right now. This is like live.
So how do you fit your WhatsApp threat model into securing your iOS environment there when you can't get rid of WhatsApp? It's part of your ecosystem. It's part of your landscape.
Well, like I said, I run like a dozen different phones, and some of them are honeypots. And the idea here is very simple. You have one phone that everybody thinks it's your main phone. Then you have another phone that you show to people, and you say like, this is the phone that I use for more sensitive stuff. and that is actually the phone that everyone will want to target, not your main phone. And then you have like half a dozen other phones that you actually use for sensitive work and discussions that run a variety of things, including, like I said, honeypots, older iOS versions, Graphene OS, which is my favorite sensitive talks platform, if you want, Graphene OS running on Google Pixel phones. So it's true that you need to
Yeah,
invest a
it's a
lot of
pain in the
money.
ass though. It's
It's a pain in the ass
like
for a
living like you is a
complex.
pain in the ass. Like this is not a
Well,
normal way for
thank
people to
you.
live.
Why, thank you. I know, right? But in my opinion, this is the way. Like, there's no other way to live. I mean, it's the only way. There's a huge difference between me and you guys, which is that you have a US phone number. Your phone numbers, they start with the +1. And that means that you are technologically protected from being targeted with NSO Pegasus, which has these technological blocks. You will not be
Like
targeted by,
geotechnology blocks.
correct, you'll not be get targeted by Five Eyes and related intelligence agencies, because they don't target US citizens, right? So this is like a huge difference from let's say what uh, what it means to have these +1 phone numbers and being a US citizen and the rest of the world, which is why you need to run 10 phones, 6 of them with Graphene OS, 2 honeypots, 1 for real, 1 for fake,
No wonder your internet is
and
all fucked up.
monitor everything. So no wonder, yeah, no
It's
wonder,
going through like
because
7 VPNs is
80 megabits out of the 100 megabits that I use for that is just honeypot traffic.
Juanito, close the show with some shout outs.
I thought you wanted to hang out, man.
We're not
No,
hanging
so
out.
we're not hanging. No, you're done. Okay. Actually, well, first of all, shout out to like the 20 people that have actually hung out on the live stream. We were
yeah.
experimenting this time around, and like
Absolutely.
they've been
It's
in there
so
chatting,
busy in
and
there I
like
can't keep track.
they're keeping me honest, and keeping me from just like
Important
bulldozing
question.
over Costin all day. It's like,
Did you
what?
change the way you think on podcasts because there was a live audience?
I
Did you
definitely
check your
changed.
words? Did you tone down certain things? I'm just curious about your mindset knowing that there's a live audience watching.
I think the only thing like I definitely was paying a little more attention to some of the chat, um, but I don't think I changed my words. The thing I did do that I think a lot of people complain about is I don't realize when I kind of drive a truck right over Costin's argument, like whatever the hell Costin's talking about, and then like we leave for like 15 minutes and then we don't circle back. So I'm glad that people were like, "Hey, we still wanted to hear the end of Costin's thing." I'm like, "Oh, I'll shut the fuck up. I'm sorry. Like, let me, you know." So it's nice to have a bit of like a quicker feedback loop in that sense. It just means, Ryan, we're gonna have to make the podcast longer, bro. I don't know what to tell
I
you.
don't know about
Uh,
you. Any
Bio
LabsCon
breaks
news
and
to
pizza.
share?
Yeah, so yeah, actually, so LabsCon, I don't know, man. Why should we keep rubbing the LabsCon stuff, in people's faces? It's sold out. We're
The
done.
audience
Like
is
it's
the audience is a bunch of LabsCon folks as well. So
That's true. It's like it's a self-licking ice cream cone out here. But no, we're pretty excited about this. Things are starting to get real. It's why you see me like more tired and stressed out, as like the 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 work that it takes to put on this conference is like a steady slope that just resets the day the conference ends, and like, you're already signing contracts like before, the second this is over, you're signing contracts for the next year, and like it just keeps steadying up. So these past couple of weeks have started to become a lot, and they will only get worse, at least for Ryan and I, and St. Myers, Hagel, Courtney Duff, the people that put this together. But it's very exciting times for what's coming. Like the talks sound fucking phenomenal. I'll be very happy to see all of our friends there. I think LabsCon this year will also mark a year of like a new project at Sentinel One that we've been working on with Steve Stone and this new expanded organization. So it's inviting a whole lot of like retrospective thinking about what we've accomplished over the past 12 months. And it's why, like, I kept telling you, like, I don't like taking a talk at my own conference. It kind of feels like yeah, it feels like just self-congratulatory in a way that I don't appreciate. But last year, it was a sort of ev- painful evaluation of where we are in cybersecurity, and I think a lot of people looked worried. Like they looked at me like I was, like getting ready to hang myself off a fan, just because like cybersecurity is not going well. But in reality, it was a very sober assessment. It was like if I am gonna take a slot here, then let me come out and say exactly what I think and feel about where we are, and that last year was not a very pretty picture. So I think this year, if I am going to come back on stage, it should be a sober follow up of that that says, okay, those were all the problems and things we were deeply uncomfortable with, and the like shitty situation that we were in. This is what it looks like from the other side, because I do think that at least for the project that we've taken on at S1, it I'm seeing a very interesting future that it's starting to work out for us. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Two quick shout outs from my side. Shout outs to our sponsors at LabsCon. LabsCon is not a business. We rely entirely on all the sponsorship, and all the money from the sponsorship goes back into the conference. Luckily, we have that advantage in that we don't have to make a profit. I just wanted to flag a bunch of these sponsors who have generously and quite early, without getting like leads and all that, a list of attendees back, have come back and supported us. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to those guys as well. And one last shout out from my side. We have a new company. Our friend Pascual Stirparo announced yesterday, Rational Edge. I know he's been mentioning he's been working on this for a long time. The website is out at rationaledge.io. I have it up on the screen here. Juanito, do you know what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us have been advising and kind of watching this rise up, and I'm super proud of Pasquale sort of taking this on as just an analyst who knows what our needs are and is just trying to meet that need. It's not big company bullshit. It's not how do I make, some 50x multiplier by like turning this into some milquetoast product nobody actually wanted. It is a very tailored platform for the kind of analysis, particularly that those of us that like doing like endpoint malware and stuff like that need. And I'm actually really excited for its development. I love this. Like, I really think that I want to see way more of these smaller companies that VCs might refer to derogatorily as lifestyle businesses, but that really ultimately are the ones that are actually going to meet the needs of the threat intel community, of the research community, and do so in a way that we can afford, that we can leverage, that takes feedback, that is doing high-end use cases that we've all been asking for forever, that companies that supposedly serve our needs just won't do. Like, I look at VirusTotal, never, ever, 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 ever giving us a full retro hunt, and like literally having like a facetious fucking survey form on their website as like a giant fuck you to the community they serve. Not to come down on those guys, but like I'm saying, like if VT
Come down
was
on
still,
them, man. Why are you why are you checking
because
yourself?
because I love VirusTotal,
I know,
and like I love VirusTotal, and like any time I spent on VT, maybe not so much the new portal, but any time I spent on VT was always a rewarding experience in my life. So I love that fucking company, and I love the product. But what I will say is, I can accept a Rational Edge or a VirusTotal as a little house in Malaga with a bunch of like cool dudes doing some cool shit. I can accept their limitations and them saying like, we can't, man. Like, we have a ton of data. We can't affordably support to like do full scanning over, 6 petabytes from our house out here. Once you're in Google, just choosing not to do things like that I know you can do, and choosing not to give people that, even though you're charging everybody 20x what you used to charge, it just feels like we can't be bothered. And it's okay if that's the way that VT and others are going to go, so be it. But I think that that's precisely the opportunity I want to see companies like stairwell and fucking and rational edge and URL scan and valid in and silent push, and like you see these new players come in to fill those gaps, and I think the economic incentives at that level make sense to actually serve the needs we have, as opposed to what we see the minute that something gets sold to a PE firm or to a mega giant, and they suddenly you're trying to squeeze 300x returns on the same business rather than the health of the cybersecurity industry. So that's a really long way of shouting out, I am super supportive of Pasquale and his endeavor. I hope folks find it useful. And I look forward to more of these things, hopefully.
Costin, close this show. Have you gotten a look at
And
Rational Edge? Have you gotten a chance to
I
talk
have.
to Pasquale and these guys about this?
Yeah, I spent some time and we chatted. Even at PivotCon, I think after the conference, we talked a bit about this. I think it's even more impressive, and I know that Pasquale did everything by himself, which is a monumental effort to develop not just the research systems, the back end, but also the front end and the processing and the parsing and the user interface. So that's even more amazing. I'm looking forward to see a demo, like a live demo on YouTube, for Pasquale to do a webinar to demonstrate the platform. I think everyone would love to see that. So I hope he does it soon. So again, good luck with the company. I know how difficult it is to start your own company alone by yourself, to give up your job, as Pasquale did, and jump into the unknown, and have like a budget of, let's say, XK. And you know that the moment that the XK are gone, you need to start looking for a new job again, and your project, your dream has failed. So good luck to Pasquale, and well done.
Great way to end it. I want to again thank the folks who hung out in chat with us. It was pretty cool to watch a bunch of folks who, we shared it with a handful of people and we had 20 people hanging out there all week. If this thing holds up, maybe we'll do this every week. I don't know.
I mean, it would be interesting. I think, if we keep it on the...
I don't want you censoring yourself, though. If these live people are going to have you censoring yourself, I'm going to kick them out.
It's not censoring me, though. I will say, shout out to Mac, Don McCarthy. I mentioned him earlier, like kind of fact checking me on a lot of like the telco stuff and telling me kind of what's right and wrong as we're listening, as we're recording this thing. He's always been an amazing supporter of what we're up to, and like he's doing some pretty cool shit with his startup as well. So I should at least kind of shout him out. Well, I won't speak for him, because I know he's doing some cool shit, and I don't know to what extent he's like putting it out there properly just yet. But yeah, if you're doing if you're interested in some interesting network monitoring stuff, like that's your boy. Like talk to Donald McCarthy, Mac to all of us, and Sin Mac. And on that, he's also brought up a point that I think I didn't realize. The argument for the live stream is this has got Glasshouse energy. If you remember, like we used to do the Glasshouse streams, it was like the Grug, Dave Vitale, me, Silas Cutler, a bunch of folks would sort of like jump in and out. Thomas Ridd was on it. I think Dmitry Alperovich jumped on at some point. Like we just kept like Hamid, Kim Setter, like yeah. So like and it used to be this like we just get on there and talk shit on Twitch for 4 hours, and it just
for 4 hours.
It had a very irreverent energy. It had I think a very like uncensored energy. And I see, in some ways, I see the Three Buddy problem as almost like a more polished version of that. But having the live stream actually makes it feel very similar of like, having that kind of feedback there. So there is an argument for having it.
If it works and you guys are comfortable and you're not going to be like watching your P's and Q's because someone is looking at it live, if that's the case, I'll kick him out. If
the minute like a Google lawyer shows up into the thing, right?
Exactly.
It's like,
exactly. And we've had folks from Google, GTIG expressing interest in coming on the show. We've had people from we have the ability to do some pretty cool live streams with some live guests and so on.
So you know what we should do is obviously we should do more guests, absolutely. But I also think for these some of these live events that we're talking about, that's a good opportunity to bring on some some other folks, right? The same we did
100%.
with Brandon Dixon.
Brandon.
Have a different kind of interactivity to have a crowd there with you, and that's what we should consider, right? Countermeasures is coming, LabsCon is coming, and I think we need to treat it as the opportunity to bring some folks on stage. And if folks at Google, I mean, honestly, choice folks at Google, right? Like Heather Atkins is
100%.
great, Billy's
Everyone comes on
great,
the show
like
is a
Hulkquist.
choice.
Yeah, but I'm saying like there are amazing people we'd love to chat on with here. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, folks, we'll catch you next week. If I don't stop this thing, it'll never stop. Peace
How
out.
come we don't have a soundtrack like a 3-body problem?
No,
Next.
no, 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 guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.